everybody. Welcome to C3 Films. Today we are doing another episode of It Wasn't That Good. And today we're going to be talking about the secrets of Dumbledore. So if you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and watch it or not. It doesn't really matter in our opinion. It's not necessarily worth seeing, but sometimes we like to just talk about things that we don't like. But so I'm Cheryl, and this is
Chris.
and let's get going. So, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not gonna lie, I don't think it was that terrible. It's not something that I would tell everyone to go watch. And I had mentioned to you earlier that I did not realize that I didn't actually see the second movie in this trilogy.
Yeah.
And if I can tell you right now, I'm not gonna go back and watch it because I definitely don't think it'll be worth my time to go back and watch it.
I see. I think it's better than this movie. I personally think this is like one of those few movies that we watched that I think is legitimately terrible. And the reason I feel that way all has to deal with how the story and the characters are handled. Uh there are characters that you want to like, but you mentioned there's a lot I can say negative about this movie, so I'll try to like take it in like bits. But one of the biggest things is that it is clearly written by somebody who normally writes novels. It is not written by a screenwriter, and you can tell because of how the dialogue plays out. Like when you're reading a book, there's a lot of description in a book, right? But a movie is about show and don't tell. So one of the most egregious scenes in this movie that demonstrates a lack of that ability is when we run into Dumbledore again for the first time, and we already know that he can't raise a hand to I was about to say Voldemort, to Grindelwald, because we found that out in the last movie. But in this movie, what they literally do is they have him like demonstrate it, but he doesn't just demonstrate it. He actually explains bit by bit what is happening as if you're reading a book. And it's like, guys, that's not great. That's not great writing, especially when the audience already knows that you can't do this because of a spell. But he's like, it's like it senses my blah 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 blah, and he goes on for like 2 minutes, explaining the process of why this is happening. And it's like, and that happens a lot in the movie, and that is where most of my frustration with it comes from as a starting point.
Okay, I can see that now. I think maybe the reason why I didn't think it was that bad was because I needed that
You're like, see
explanation
the second movie.
because I didn't see the second movie. Literally, like one of my first notes was from like one of the very first scenes when like the two baby animals were born, and I was
Hmm.
confused because I was like, how did this one get there? I thought they had just carried the other one away, and then Newt goes twins, and I was like,
Hmm.
oh, twins. I was like,
Twins.
I legit needed him to tell me that they had twins so that I could
Hmm.
understand like what the heck just happened and why the animal is like back here now. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
that. I think I just like subconsciously didn't realize that I needed the verbal explanation because I wasn't understanding what was happening.
No, I mean, and with that twins moment, that one doesn't feel as bad to me because that's almost kind of like a shock moment. Like, wait a second, how did you have two kids? We I thought we only had one. That's how you had twins. Wow. And then the thing dies, which is terrible. But and then Grindelwald kills the other one, which is also terrible. But anyway,
Super dark.
yeah, right. And like and the thing is, because then what ends up happening is that so we end up recruiting all these different characters, and some of them are from old movies, some of them are new to this one. I mean, Newt Scamander's brother, I don't even remember what's his name.
Theseus?
Theseus. Like, basically, Theseus doesn't really add anything to the story. Like, there are like maybe 5 or 6 members of their group, and literally maybe one or two of them do something of note in the story. Most of them actually don't have any real bearing on the story, and even the things that they're supposed to be doing don't really make sense. Like, they give the muggle a wand, right? And then the idea, I think, is so that I forget the character's name, but
Jacob.
he Jacob. They make it look as if he's trying to assassinate Grindelwald, but Muggles can't use magic. So if he's trying to assassinate Grindelwald using magic, how does that make sense when he's a Muggle? And how does that add to his whole "we need to kill all Muggles"? Because it's not like they tried to shoot him with a gun. They tried to use magic. So clearly, if they're using magic, it's not a muggle, it's a mage. So it doesn't actually work with the whole thing of like making more people hate muggles if you really think about like what's actually happening. And so that was another story moment where I'm like, that doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things there where I kind of enjoyed the setup actually, where they all get on the train and basically they tell us like, well, we can't really have a plan, or we have to have a bunch of different plans that are overlapping, so it confuses Grindelwald. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And then there was the whole thing about Newt not getting to take his suitcase, and he feels like super insecure
Mm-hmm.
without his
Right.
suitcase and stuff like that. So like that part I liked, but then after that I was like, okay, now I'm just really confused, and I guess we
Yeah.
have to find out what's going on as they go. Like they basically told us that, okay, look, it's we can't have a plan, and we can, and basically you also as a viewer don't get to know what the plan is. And so the rest of the movie is just like, oh, they're doing this thing now, and now they're doing this thing, and I don't know why they're doing this thing, but it's part of the plan to like not let us know. So I think that's when I started to really get checked out, because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of it initially was a cool idea, but I feel like the way that it was presented to us and the way that like the scenes were executed, it just didn't really like hold my attention. Like I could see it making sense after I've seen the whole movie, but the fact that you have to see the whole movie unfold to understand like why any of that even happened is not very good. Plus, like you mentioned, not all of it was like necessary, but they also told us that we're gonna do unnecessary things. So
Right.
I don't really know why.
But
Like,
see, and that's the thing, it's a movie, right? And like if you're telling us that we're watching a scene that's not going to matter, then delete it. It doesn't need to be in
yeah,
your movie and we can get a shorter runtime. Like that's the whole thing. Like I actually don't even think the plan really comes together because it doesn't really feel, because like the whole thing is like when I think about plans that you don't know, like I think about heist movies. Like every time with a heist movie, there's like information you don't know, but then by the end of the movie, you can see why people did certain things and how it came together to make it so that you could be like, oh my gosh, that makes sense now. This movie doesn't have that. You don't get to the end and then say to yourself, the reason that Dumbledore told Newt to whisper to the guy to say do the right thing was because it was going to lead to this moment. He whispers to tell the guy to do the right thing, and the guy does the wrong thing anyway. So it was like, why did Newt need to go there? And nothing happened. As far as like, I mean, sure, it's realistic for like what can happen in real life, but from a standpoint of a story and the idea that only Dumbledore has the full plan, it doesn't do anything. If anything, it gets Theseus captured and then sends Newt on a side mission to go and rescue his brother. And that thing doesn't have any bearing on the overall plot either. And then we even send the Lestrange's brother to go and be like a double agent working for Grindelwald. But one, I swear that actor doesn't talk for like the most of the movie. Like he doesn't say anything even when he's with Grindelwald basically and has like no emotion. And then all the only thing he does is that at the very end he just kind of walks up to the front and turns around and like does a wand thing. That's not like a really big moment that required him to like be undercover for that whole time either. So again, it's a payoff that doesn't really feel like any real payoff. And so my frustration with the movie, a lot of it comes from what you just mentioned about like how their whole plan is to confuse Grindelwald, which I think, like you, I like, oh man, that actually is a cool idea. You have someone that can see the future. We're going to confuse them. But as a result, what ends up happening is that if it doesn't actually lead to anything, you also confuse the audience. And then when you get to the end, if it doesn't come together, the audience looks back and says, so wait, so why did I even see that scene?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also I felt the same way actually about the whole thing with Yusef. Uh,
Yusef, thank you. That's his
yeah,
name.
Lestrange.
Yeah, Lestrange.
Like when he went to Grindelwald and basically said, "I'm gonna be." I was sent here to be a spy, but now I'm gonna be your spy and everything. I was like, "Oh, okay, he's gonna do something cool." And what's her name, Queenie, said that he was telling the truth. So I was like, oh, did he really just switch sides and stuff? So I thought that was interesting. But then at the end, like, one, he doesn't do anything. He's just
Nope.
hanging out with them. We're not getting any extra intel. He doesn't give. He doesn't send any intel over. At the end, we don't get any intel from him afterwards. It just. I guess it's just one of those, false storylines or overlapping plans that didn't work out,
Yeah.
that was just meant to confuse, but it was just a lot of like, I don't know, like in hindsight it's just such a bad idea to have all these overlapping things that don't do anything,
They don't do anything.
because then you just have a lot of like junk in your movie that we don't really need to see. All that really did for me is wonder whether or not he was actually going to turn on them. When he
And then we're
didn't,
not.
I was actually kind of upset
It's
that he
upset.
didn't.
Yeah, it would have been better if he actually was evil at
Yeah.
that point.
um. What else was I gonna say? I don't know. I mean,
Like
I
you said, there's a lot of junk in the movie at that point.
yeah. I mean, I enjoyed having things explained to me because I really did need it, but you're right. In film, we shouldn't really have that. We should be shown things.
Hmm.
Like, I think what I was enjoying the most was seeing Newt's assistant be in charge of the suitcases, and I love how she, like, that was like the perfect thing. She got a note from Dumbledore that gave her instructions, and then it like what self-restructed. I was like, okay, this is really cool. And then she took the suitcase and she says some really cryptic thing like, we all don't get to know everything, and
Yeah.
like even you. And then she makes copies of the suitcase, and then we go to the room of requirement, and that's when everyone grabs the suitcases. And I was like, someone has to know which one it is. And I really hoped that they had done more with the suitcases, because
Hmm.
I thought it was cool what they did already, but they were just missing that one thing of
Yeah.
there being like a big reveal of like, actually we played you. Actually, she has the suitcase because this happened and you missed it, but we showed it to you. And here it is. She has it at the very end. But no, it's just kind of, they all get a suitcase, and then we never see her, but we
Her, we
see
never see
everyone
her, which makes
else.
no sense.
Yeah. And then she just shows up at the end like, surprise, I have the suitcase. And I was like, okay. I was
Okay.
See, what I was hoping was that Dumbledore lied to Jacob to tell him that he doesn't have the suitcase, but he really
He actually
did.
did. Yeah.
But that didn't
And then
happen.
and that would have encouraged him to like be more aggressive or be more in himself, and because that seems like a Dumbledore thing to do, right? Lie to you
Mm-hmm.
so that he can get the result that he wants, but also he can pull the best out of you.
Yeah.
Like that's very Dumbledore, but
Yes.
that's
It,
like you
it
said,
didn't happen.
that's not what happened. Like what you proposed was a better solution. And the sad part is that like up at that point in the movie, now we have a tangible goal because yeah, in the beginning, the first half of the movie, we're kind of just spinning our wheels, right? Because we don't know what anything we're doing is going to have an effect on the plot, and a lot of the stuff doesn't. And so we're kind of just floundering. But then at that point, it's like we have a goal. We have to get the Kieran to the judgment, and we have to do it before Grindelwald gets voted in. So now we not only have a goal, we have a clock, and those are two things that you need to make for a very exciting scene, right? And but what ends up happening is that yeah, they take an assistant, and we don't ever get to see her. So essentially, we see 4 of the 5 suitcases, and then when all 4 of those get destroyed for whatever reason, she just shows up out of nowhere. And it's not anything that's cool, like, hey, this is what she actually did to get by everybody, or this is how we tricked everybody. It's just a thing of, we didn't show you what happened to her. So since the audience didn't know, that means everybody else that was security didn't know, and that's how she just got here. And it's really sad because even though like this movie has problems, like a better version of that same scene is like the end game scene where they're basically trying to keep the Infinity Stones away from Thanos. Because now you're like, we know what we have to do. Thanos is there. The Infinity Stones are here. If he gets to them, we lose. So let's get them away. And every time he gets close to them, we're now afraid because he's about to have them back again. And then all of a sudden you find out at the end he doesn't have them. Now we win. And that's what makes that scene exciting. And that would something like that would have worked better for this scene, but it just doesn't happen. And I think that's like one of the biggest things with this movie is just that there's so many things that you feel like are going to build to something, and it just falls flat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing for me was I really thought that something cool was gonna happen with the assistant and the suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
But then we really just didn't get anything. She just shows up with it, and I was just incredibly disappointed with that. The other thing I really hated was how the Chilin bowed to Albus Dumbledore, and he was like, "No, no, 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 not me, not me." I was like, "Of course." I thought it would bow to Jacob.
Right. Yeah.
Like, why? I mean, it's almost like I really thought that they brought Jacob back into this film so that he could do more, but he
Yeah.
didn't.
Doesn't.
And like
Mm-mm.
there were so many opportunities. Like I thought he would have the suitcase. I thought like how wild would it be if it bowed to him
A
because
human, a muggle.
yeah, and like that would totally change the way that the wizarding world would see muggles and therefore, be like a huge eye opener, but no, then it just of course it bows to Albus Dumbledore, like the most predictable thing ever,
Mm-hmm.
and then he goes no 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 no, pick someone else, and then it picks the lady, and we're like okay.
Yeah, sure. And like that character is also not anybody special, right? We don't know this character.
Does
Like
she
they
even
build up
have
this
any
character,
words? Like she
right?
doesn't have any lines.
We see this character get like almost assassinated, but we never meet this character. We never get to have a conversation with her where we can say, you know what, we want her to win, and then have it be a moment of congratulations or like feeling good because the person that we've been following gets the crown. Like Cinderella gets the slipper, Mulan gets the sword or whatever. Just like we don't get the reward of having someone that we've been following win. And so when that moment is supposed to be a big moment, it's not even like it's a character from the other movies that we can like recognize or anything else like that. There's no connection with this character. So once again, a big moment falls flat.
So the other thing that I kind of didn't like was that they didn't kill the villain. They let him get away. So I'm like,
Because there were supposed to be 4 other movies after this. That's
oh
why.
gosh,
They
I
were
was like,
supposed to. I don't know if there still will be.
I really hope they don't, because I mean, honestly, I thought like the first movie was like fine. That had its own issues, but it was like fine. And then what I had to watch a recap version of the second movie because I didn't really know. I didn't know that I didn't see it until I started watching this one. I was like, I have missing information.
Right.
So, but just watching the recap, I was like, this is so soapy. Like, it's such a soap
Yes.
opera, and I really don't want to watch the second movie because like the whole thing was pretty much, oh, he was related to this person and this person's cousin was like adopted, and then the
Yeah, this
babies
it
got
gets kind of
switched, but
crazy.
then that one died and that one over there, and then we find out that this was a relative of blah 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 blah, and I was like,
Whoa.
what?
Yeah. No, and also to be fair, Grindelwald does not die in the story. Like even in Harry Potter, remember, because Grindelwald is in Azkaban prison because Voldemort goes to see Grindelwald in like one of the last movies. So Grindelwald can't die, but Grindelwald also did not get arrested.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just I think it's ready to be over. Like I can see them wanting to do a trilogy and like making something out of that, but I was just kind of thinking about how we're getting all these different Star Wars stories that are not related to the main trilogies, and
Yeah.
how some of like it's a hit or miss. Some of them are cool. Some of them are like
Yeah.
adding to the to the main storyline, right? Like we really like
Yeah.
Rogue One, we like Mandalorian and stuff like that.
Mm.
But there's always like a little part of it that ties back to the main storyline. And I feel like they
Mm.
try to give us that with having Albus in it, and then we go to
Yeah.
Hogwarts, we see the room requirement and stuff like that. But it doesn't like add anything to the main storyline. But even though it doesn't do that, which we can't really expect from every one of these side stories, I mean, this side story didn't really do anything for the world either.
Mm-mm.
It didn't build anything. It's just we're just seeing a story about a bunch of characters that we don't really care about. And
And
I
the
think
sad thing
that's
is that it was supposed to show us more of like the creatures in the world. That was supposed to be like the whole part, right? That
yeah.
would have built up the world.
Yeah, but it didn't. Like it was a complete letdown for that first movie because they led us to believe that we were gonna like kind of see more about this guy who wrote this textbook about these like incredible magical animals, but we didn't get any of that. We hardly saw any animals in that first movie, and we continue to not see animals in this series called Fantastical Beasts, and where to find them have yet to be found.
They have to be found, right? So there's one other question I had for you because it's another a storyline that I think they wanted to tie off just because it wasn't going anywhere, but at the same time it feels weird. But the story of Credence Dumbledore, like,
I I don't
how'd that land for you?
I don't know why. I don't really care. I don't
Yeah.
again I don't know why. um and it's just such a like and that's what I was saying, like it's such a soap opera, like they put this twist on it that he's related to Dumbledore, but I still don't know why. Like why does that matter? Why do we care? There's no reason for us to care who he is because he has his own vendetta and he doesn't do anything to change anyone's mind about anything. He's just like this kind of black sheep of the family now because he kind of turned evil, and like they want to do something about it, but then they don't. And the only thing
Because
they really
he's an
do,
obscuro, I think, right?
yeah. And
Okay.
the only thing they really do is like save him from Grindelwald at the end. But then there's also this whole thing about like the Phoenix and everything, and I don't understand what that's about. And like
I didn't understand why he was dying at the end.
yeah, and I think they tried to explain that with a story about the Dumbledore sister, but it didn't really like explain much at all.
Yeah, okay.
Um, in my opinion, I was still confused. I think I watched that scene a couple times over, just trying to understand what the heck he was talking about.
Hmm.
But the other thing I thought was weird was that Credence doesn't actually do anything like
Yep.
in this movie. It's like he tries to, but then after that, he just kind of doesn't do anything. And he reminded me a lot of Kylo Ren, where he just kind of goes off and he does evil things, but he just comes off as like a pouty brat who's not getting his way, and he's trying to be evil, but he's not doing a great job doing
Right.
that.
Yeah, another thing that also involves Credence, but involves Grindelwald as well, that I thought was a little weird, was how this movie added to the Harry Potter lore by saying that wizard battles happen in like the Shadow Realm, apparently. Like they start fighting each other and then they go to like the mirror universe out of nowhere. And I was like, when was this a thing in Harry Potter lore? And why hasn't it never been used like before after this? Like as far as the story and timeline goes. And if that's the case, why do it in this particular movie when we haven't even seen this before? We didn't even see this. We did not even see this in other Fantastic Beasts movies. So that felt like I got how it could be cool, but it just for story wise, it just felt odd because it's something that's never happened before, but they're treating it as if like it always happens.
Yeah, and I kind of just felt confused about what was going on in those combat things because they would like turn the camera around and they would do all these like weird effects and stuff, which visually looks cool, but in terms of following what was going on, it was like I was just confused because they didn't really set a bar or like a baseline to explain or visually show us like what we see versus what the muggles see, which I
Yeah.
think I wish they did. But I do know like from the main series, like
Hmm.
the magical world exists in a different layer as the muggle
Mm.
world. It's not like a separate like island that they live on. Like they live in the same area, but it's just kind of like in a magically hidden areas like diagon alleys
Yeah, as I
on
was saying,
the
like Diagon Alley, that was
yeah.
like they walked into it, or like how they take the train, like they walk through the portal that Muggles can't see.
Exactly. It's just like next to, it's like a dimension that's next to the Muggle universe. So to me, it was like, I guess that's kind of what it is. But at the same time, like, I don't think anyone ever said anything about the combat existing in a separate plane. Because that would be weird. It's like you have to intentionally go to an area
Right.
that is designated for the wizard world. So this that was completely new. I think they kind of bent the rules here.
Okay. I was confused, and I was like,
Yeah,
and I was like, it's been a while since I've seen all these Harry Potter movies, but I was pretty sure I had never seen this before.
yeah. But apparently J.K. Rowling like wrote the screenplay for
Mm-hmm.
this, so like I
Mm-hmm.
guess she's making up her own rules.
Yeah, exactly. And you can tell that she's a novel writer, not a screenwriter. And at the end of the day, when this comes down to this movie, my biggest issue is that, like, on top of all those other things that you just brought up, to me, I also just thought the movie was boring. I didn't find it exciting, and I think I didn't find it exciting because of like a lot of those things, like the payoffs not really landing, the dialogue feeling kind of like, oh my gosh, what is this? And then like yeah, and then stories not feeling like they're reaching um proper conclusions or like satisfying conclusions. So yeah, I really did not enjoy this movie, and like for me, when I was talk about this movie, it's one of the few movies that I almost consider unwatchable because of the fact that it's that bad. Like I think this, for me specifically, I think this might be the worst movie that we have talked about on this show.
Ooh, I don't know about that, but I will say I
Hmm.
will take it back. I actually I because I did say I didn't actually think it was that bad.
Talking
After
about it.
after talking about it, it's significantly worse than what I thought about. I just didn't really think about it because I was just kind of going with the flow and then just kind of like maybe it's because it was visually appealing at
Hmm.
times.
It's
Like
got
it,
good visuals. Yeah.
yeah, like it looked really cool, and I really like the actors.
Yeah. It's hard
And
not to.
I think maybe that's why is because I really liked the actors. I liked the way they acted and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But again, like the story itself fell short, and I think that I was too distracted by like the comical points where like
Hmm.
when Newt is like mimicking and yeah. So I thought that was funny, but you're right. That completely didn't do anything for the story at all. It was just a side adventure that didn't even matter, and
It didn't even matter.
it didn't even occur to me that all these characters were going off doing nothing.
Yes, and the funny thing is, in the movie, at the halfway point when they go back to Hogwarts and meet up with Dumbledore, they literally said, "I feel like we're back where we started," and I'm like, "Because you are."
Yeah. And also like the whole time I was like the reason why they're not saying what the plan is because they can't say what the plan is otherwise um Grindelwald will get a vision of them saying what their plan is, and then when they're in that room, they just kind of say what the plan is. Even though at the beginning they said they
You
weren't
can't say
gonna
it.
make a plan at all. But I think after that, like that beginning part where they're they basically give like a disclaimer where they're like, there is no plan, or we're gonna have overlapping things that like overlapping plans and stuff. And I thought that like I was just not gonna really get to know until the end, and that it would all be sewn together at the end. And I think at some point I just kind of relinquished myself to that idea of like, you're just not gonna know what's happening. And I'm like, okay, sure enough, I did not know what was happening.
Yep. They got that right. They were 100% right about that. And none of us knew what was happening.
And now I realize, wait a minute. That's not right.
So, do you feel like you'd want to see more Harry Potter movies? Like, not necessarily more Fantastic Beasts movies, but would you want to see kind of like how they do Star Wars, where we have more movies that take place in the Harry Potter world with different characters? Or do you think that it's time to move on?
No, I'm done. I mean, like you already know, and you know, if you don't know what I already said, check out our Harry Potter episode, because I rained pretty hard on that one.
Yeah, you did.
I do not like any of the Harry Potter movies or related, because they are all really bad.
And I don't think the same, but I definitely feel that about this. I will not even try. If this can be considered a Harry Potter movie, well then yeah, this has to be absolutely like the worst of them.
I mean, I'm a bookist, right? And you said it yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes writers, like novelists, just need to be novelists, and I think sometimes books just need to be
Just need
books
to be
and not
books.
movies.
Hey, that's fair. Can't argue with that. But we are running up on time here. Any like really last minute things that you want to just get out real quick?
Yes, I have a question for you. You don't have to answer, but you guys can all think about it. Who was the main character? Oh, cat got your tongue?
I mean, I want to say Dumbledore, but you know, it's funny because he's barely in the movie. So, I mean, he's not in the movie as often as Newt, but it's definitely not Newt. Newt is not the main character of this movie.
Not this time, at least.
No, absolutely not. But yeah, that's what we thought about the Secrets of Dumbledore. Did you guys see the movie? What did you think about it? Do you want to see more movies in the Harry Potter world? Do you want to see more Fantastic Beasts movies? They originally were saying there was going to be 6 of these things. Do you think that they'll make it past the 3 that they just made? What have you thought about the movie? Comment below. Let us know. And be sure to also check us out on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/C3Films. It'd be great to see you guys over there. We talk about more things after the show, and we like hang out. And yeah, just come over there and check us out. But even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we'll see you all next time.